Welcome to Patriot Network TV. I'm Hank Giesecke, and we're excited today to have Antonio Branco with us, a nationally recognized cartoonist who's able to take situations, the issues of the day, and personalities, and really kind of expand our thinking about those things to hopefully the betterment of our country. Welcome, Antonio. Good to have you here today.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Tell me a little bit, I think everybody would be interested, just how do you get into cartooning and particularly with your slant to it in terms of being able to speak to issues of the day. How did that happen? How did you get into that?
Well, back in 2010, I was working just regular jobs and I got laid off, and I decided, because of the situation that was going on in our country with Obama and some of the things he was trying to implement, I decided, I could draw, maybe I could throw a few cartoons out there. I didn't expect to make a big difference, but at least I was venting. So that's how I started in this.
Okay, all right. Well, I think that's excellent because, it's, as we were talking earlier, it's one of the things that's so important is that we live in a soundbite culture at this stage of the game. And so your cartoons have a way of expanding thinking about an issue when you draw one. And so does it just kind of come to you as you see news items or personalities? Do you kind of look for a particular focus?
Well, as the news comes in and as issues pop in, I have a particular take on them, and I am a conservative, so I try to bring out my viewpoint on a little square and try to illustrate how I'm feeling about that given issue.
Mm-hmm. Okay. No, I think that's neat. What are some of the favorites that you've been looking at? You mentioned, of course, Obama and some of the issues going on today. Is there any focus particularly on personalities or on more of the issues kind of thing as well?
Basically, I like to focus on the hypocrisy of the left, the hypocrisy of Obama, Hillary. Those are some of the things I like to bring out, like to show and illustrate. I'm fascinated by what's happening with Trump. That's an interesting development in our political history. I've never seen anything like it, and I've been following politics fairly closely since Ronald Reagan was elected, and it'll be interesting in how that'll play out.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating that the top three people right now in the Republican race are all outsiders. You got Carly, and you got Ben, and you got Trump, and you say, wow, isn't that interesting? I think there's a real message there for the GOP. So, probably be good fodder for some cartoons there.
Absolutely, and I have done a few. The GOP elite or establishment has brought this on themselves. There's no doubt. They make excuses as to why they're not passing the bills that we put them in there to pass. And their excuse, well, we can't get it passed. Obama's just going to veto it. In actuality, we should make him veto it. We should make the electorate know where the GOP stands on issues and where Obama stands on issues, especially something like Planned Parenthood. Make him veto it. Show the people where you stand on these issues, where you stand on the Iran nuke deal, where you stand on Obamacare, where you stand on Planned Parenthood. Force that issue. Let it be in the media as you standing against it and Obama standing for the atrocities that are going on with Planned Parenthood right now.
Yeah, I think that you hit upon an excellent point there, and that is that it's basic marketing 101. If you don't make your case for your side, then people don't know it. It's pretty basic.
Right.
And we see that all the time. We get all this wordsmithing by the left that just is atrocious sometimes. We're all racist because we question somebody's credentials. Well, if you go to get a job, it has nothing to do with your race. It has to do with, can you do the job?
No, and we find ourselves spending a lot of time defending it, and that's exactly by design by the left to to divert the issue away from what we should be really talking about. And that's a tactic they've been using successfully for a long time. Where Trump comes in now is the media isn't really able to pigeonhole him or shut him up. And it's rallied people towards him because he's saying a lot of what's in their hearts.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, and again, you hit upon the idea of this hypocrisy, this kind of, nobody's thinking about this. For example, this push for global climate change, which of course is totally false, we know that. And then in the next breath, they're talking about they want to help the poor. Well, the poor need electricity. I mean, I think the number is something like 100 billion people on Earth. No, excuse me, 100 million people don't have any electricity, and yet they're going to need coal plants. You're not going to do it with solar. But those two aren't put together. It's just a soundbite.
Well, the left is very good at taking issues and converting it into power for them. And global warming is just another example of that. If they can convince, the more people they can convince that global warming is actually happening as man-made cause, then the more laws and regulations and taxes they can inflict on people. They always use certain things to, the downtrodden, the poor, to entrench their power. And I'll make a statement to the fact that I believe that they really care less about the poor. It's funny how they can pick issues that advance their causes and yet ignore other issues that don't.
Yes. No, you hit upon a great idea. I noticed that several surveys that have been done over the last, 10 years or so, show that individually people on the left give much less than people who are conservative. So
absolutely,
personally, they have no interest, like you say, unless it advances their cause. And certainly, we were talking earlier, is that this war on poverty has been a real mess. All it's done is created entitlement people, which doesn't help them. It's not good for them.
Well, it's a plantation type mentality. Herd all these people onto a plantation and feed them mediocre means, and then every 4 years bring them out to vote and then herd them back onto the plantation. And their lives have not changed. When any black conservative gives them an idea of how to change their lives and better their lives, they're pushed down. They're called Uncle Toms. The media has been very successful in marginalizing conservatives because the media predominantly, in my opinion, is left.
Yeah, I think there's no question on that. I mean, look how they've taken after Ben Carson on some of these issues. I mean, he's speaking the truth. He's speaking things that we know work or don't work, and yet they just hammer him for this stuff. It just makes you wonder,
they have selective outrage. They weren't outraged over what Bill Ayers did and what he's still doing and what he's still saying. They're not outraged over what Reverend Wright has said in his pew with Obama sitting in the pew for 20 years. They're not outraged over all the things that Al Sharpton has said over the years. No, they're going to be outraged over something that was said at a Trump rally by somebody in the audience.
Right.
And they're going to be outraged at Trump over that. And that's where they pick what people should be outraged by. And we talked earlier about Cecil the Lion, how outraged they were over Cecil the Lion, and just a few days before these Planned Parenthood videos came out, and hardly a mention about babies being butchered in these Planned Parenthood clinics. So the selective outrage, people, they seem to gravitate to whatever the media says. I'm not saying everybody, I'm just saying that predominantly in our culture, that's the way it is.
Antonio, that's an excellent point on the Cecil the Lion thing. The thing that hit me most was here they're screaming about this man who shot this lion over there and went on and on and on about that. And yet a couple of days later we had a shooting, and guess what, here in the United States, I think it was in Maryland or somewhere, and the whole conversation was about the gun. Well, a gun's just a tool. I mean, it's gotten so ludicrous. I understand somewhere in Europe they've talked about doing away with paring knives. And I'm thinking, how crazy is this? It has to do with what's in a person's mind and heart, not the weapon.
Absolutely.
And yet they play the game, like you say. They mess with the language here, and people don't sit and say, well, wait a minute, does that make sense?
No, people are being corralled into the direction that they want them to be in.
Yes, exactly. Let me switch, kind of focus here a little bit. One of the things that I think is fascinating, certainly is to me, and I think to our viewers, is when you hop up in the morning and have a cup of coffee and start reading the news, do things just kind of come to you? Do you specifically look at situations and say, is there something I can draw here? I'm not artistic at all, and so I think that'd be fascinating to know how that works for you.
Well, when I read any given story, or I watch something going on television or on the news, images pop into my mind, and I try to throw some humor in with whatever issue to kind of bring it home. And that's basically how I work. What I ask myself on any given issue, what do I think about it? How do I feel? What message do I want to communicate about this issue? And I do that every day. Some issues are probably more important to me than others, but
sure, yeah. Well, and like you say, I mean, issues kind of come and go. That's the other thing is that a lot of the censorship, if you will, that goes on in the media keeps us focused on what they want us focused on. I mean, an example that always hits me is that this slaughter of Christians worldwide has been going on for a decade, and we rarely hear anything about it. We don't have our government doing anything about it, whatever, and yet now we're all fried out about this Syrian thing. So it's a censorship in the first degree that media is doing to us.
Right. Well, other than Fox News, the media only allows things out that fit their agenda and their worldview. If it doesn't fit into that what they peg to be important, it's not going. If it makes Obama look bad, it's not coming in there. You're not going to hear about it. And if you do, it's going to be on a vague term, and it's probably going to be on how Republicans made him do it, or there's always a way to make Obama look good and the Republicans look bad. So people really need to be vigilant about what the truth is, and programs like yours, cartoonists, conservative social media are working overtime to try to, poke through the media, and that's just what we have to keep doing.
Yes. Well, and two, it's one of those things where the media has so beat down America and American citizens, I think, is that somehow, you have a lot of our youth. Quan and I both talk to high school groups and college groups, and they tend to think America's so bad. And my comment to that always is, then why are people still risking their lives to come here? As opposed to, they're not fighting to get into Afghanistan, that I notice. So, again, it's one of those things where, you have an amazing role in terms of making people think and wake up to what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's been a long process with the media and with our culture, our education system. It's really hard to overcome it, and we're seeing the fruits of that right now.
Yes. Well, and again, we facing, as you pointed out earlier, this fundamental transformation, which is a disaster to us. I was struck this morning with this whole climate change thing in terms of the kind of disconnect that's there. First off, none of the data supports global warming. Secondly is, the climate has always changed. It's up and down. I mean, these same people 30 years ago were yelling about an ice age, and yet the poor people in this on this earth need coal plants and natural gas plants in order to live better. And so if we really care about people, that's where we ought to be trying to help them get what they need. And so, you know, it's one of the major issues.
Absolutely, but as in one of my cartoons last week, I believe, it's the golden sacred cow of the left. They're using global warming and climate change as a way to empower themselves and bring about more power for themselves and to grow government. And that's strictly what it's all about for them. The more people they can convince and scare to death about it, the more money they can get, the more regulations they can inflict, and the more control they can have over our daily lives. And that's all it's about. They know that it's going to hurt the poor to close down these coal plants,
right,
but they're going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
They know that it costs a lot of jobs to close down these coal plants. They're going to do it anyway, because that's not what it's about. It's about gaining more control and power for themselves.
Yes. Well, and isn't it interesting that when you look back through all of human history, the usual has been tyranny. And that's exactly what we're headed back to. I mean, this American experiment for 38 years has been amazingly different than most of human history. And yet these guys, like you say, are going back to this tyranny because there's this thirst for power that they have among themselves.
It's the natural inclination of humanity. What America is unnatural.
Yes. Yeah, very much so. Yeah, this idea of personal responsibility and personal freedoms, and I know I try to push on that, is that this personal freedom that we have in this American experiment also requires personal responsibility. And so I take my hat off to you, because you're helping to awaken people to what's going on. And as Scripture says, we're to be men of Issachar who understand the times and know what the nation ought to do. So hopefully that gets some change out there.
I just couldn't stand by and say nothing as I see our country being turned into something I don't recognize. And that's why I do what I do. And I appreciate all the friends and followers that I have on social media, Facebook and Twitter, for sharing my work and communicating with me. I enjoy speaking with them, and I enjoy communicating, and it's just a good time, actually. And,
good. Well,
they've helped me get this far. They've been instrumental in allowing me to have this platform.
I think that's awesome. And as we kind of wrap up today, what I'd like to do is, can you, Antonio, give us your website and all that sort of stuff and contacts, so that, I think it'd be awesome with more and more newspapers and everything else start getting your cartoons. So if you could tell us a little bit about, how they can contact you, or your website, all that sort of stuff as we end up here.
Comically Incorrect is my website. But I do cartoons for Legal Insurrection, netrightdaily.com, and libertyalliance.com. Those are the people that I draw the cartoons for, and I post them up there prior to posting them on my website, of course, and I share from those websites as well. I do have a book coming out, probably a coffee table book coming out probably towards the end of October, beginning to do pre-orders then. So I'm looking forward to that. And I will alert people, and it will be on my website, and I'll be sharing that on Facebook and social media as well.
That's super. Well, listen, Antonio, we've certainly enjoyed talking, and I think what you're doing is awesome, really trying to get us back on track as a nation and as a people, and I thank you so very much.
Thank you. I appreciate what you're doing.
You betcha. And again, this is Hank Giesecke with Patriot Network TV. We thank you for joining us. Join us again soon. Thank you.